Oh, I was enjoying the music. All right, well, I'm going to look at Ross to give me a countdown, and that's going to tell us.
Are you sure you're ready?
I'm not sure, but the music's gone. All right. Well, welcome, and welcome for those that are here, those that are seated next to me, behind me at the stage, and welcome to those that are joining us online. Really appreciate having your presence here. Today will be our first Q1 Town Hall. It will be a review of the last 3 months and some things that we can look forward to. But also for the first of the year, for the first Town Hall of the year, I also will be doing a reveal of the priorities for the district. So how did these priorities come to be? Well, I'll include that as a part of the presentation. But I just want to say I really do appreciate everyone who's here, because what you have in common is that you care about the community. You care about investing in Cobb County, and we can only do that when we work together. We can only continue to thrive and grow when we work together. Now, my district is such a blessing. It is so diverse, so many different opinions, points of views, experiences, backgrounds, and that's something that we should be really proud of and appreciate. And I believe that we can be a model for the entire county and for the country, because the issues that we face are not unique to us, but we have unique talent. So with that, I'm not going to belabor the point too much because we have a lot to get through in today's session. I do have a lot of special guests here. If you would like to just stand, some of our county members, including some of our constitutional officers, Sheriff Owens, you want to just let everybody see you, wave. Got Director Tanks. Please stand. I can't see everybody. I see Erica, Director Erica. Yep, there we go. Sharon, please stand if you're with the county. There we go. And we have someone who's standing in for our fire chief. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. So we have quite a few members here today, and I can't see everyone. I see Chief Cox is here as well. Great. Can't see everybody, so please help me if you can, if you're here. Rhonda, thank you for being here as well. And we have members of the community that were selected by drawing, and we did the drawing live on Facebook. So you're all winners today. Congrats for being here. All right, so our presentation will begin. If this works. It's not working. Yeah. Still not working. Okay. Not sure what's going on there, but this is our agenda. There we go. Thank you. Looks like it fell asleep. So here's our agenda for today. I will be covering the 2021 priorities. Then I'll be giving some updates for what's going on around the county, but it won't just be me. We have some other members of the community that will be giving some updates as well. And we'll have an update from the Cobb County School Board, one of our members who represents Walton and Wheeler. And we'll also have an update from Cobb County Legislative Delegation, the chair of our legislative delegation. And then there will be some Q&A at the end. And there were some questions that were brought in through the registration form. So we've included the most frequently asked questions. And afterwards, if there's time, then we will take questions from the audience as well. Everyone understand the ground rules for today? Fantastic. Let's continue. Okay. We're just going to have fun today, aren't we? Can we advance the slide? There we go. So the Connecting Cobb priorities. Anyone that's followed me over the last year, you know I talked a lot about Connecting Cobb, and that's because our communities are so distinct. And as I mentioned earlier, we're so diverse. So I think the best way to move forward is by building together. is by sharing our experiences, is by understanding the unique challenges that our communities face. So the Connecting Cobb priorities are just that, the ways in which we can connect Cobb. So I began building this list initially after listening to people, listening to some of the issues that take place around the district, and then put together a list of priorities and things that we could do all together. And so as a part of that listening tour, we advanced to the collaboration tour, which was where I scheduled sessions with individual groups and revealed each of those priorities in a private Zoom setting with different organizations and HOAs around the district. And in these settings, the individuals on the calls were able to give their input, share their opinions, request changes, add things to the list, and so on. And so as a result of sitting in those sessions, I then compiled all of those different results, and now we are revealing what the results were of all of those talks. You guys ready? Drum roll. We're not yet. So before I get to the actual priorities, one of the things that's really important is to know what you're measuring, to know what is important in terms of the metrics that you want to follow to get somewhere. It's really important to me. So I wanted for everyone to see what exactly I'm looking at and what matters to my office in conducting and executing these priorities. So the first is sustainable financial practices, meaning that we're sensible about the money that we have because it is not unlimited, but also that we're creative about how we solve our unique problems, how we tackle those things, and how we engage partners in coming up with solutions that are sustainable from a fiscal perspective. This also includes strategic positioning. Why? Because we have so many wonderful assets in District 2. So we need to always position ourselves to be strategic and ahead of the curve so that we're not behind the curve and letting challenges come to us, but that we're proactive in how we go about solving them and addressing them. This also includes equitable development. So I chose equitable because a lot of people say equality, but equity is different from equality. Equality is everyone gets the same. Equity is what is needed to get the thing done for that particular area, because different areas have different needs. There are different challenges, different hurdles. And so when coming up with solutions, we have to make sure that those hurdles and things are considered as a part of the solution. And then constituent experience rating. I thought this was very, very important. You should feel good about your government. You should feel good when you contact us, when you ask us a question, when you're looking for some resources, when you're looking for a way to have a solution for a particular issue that you're looking at. So that's something that we'll be looking at as well. And that's because we expect the best. That is our standard. So what is my North Star? The North Star is the biggest metric that I really care about. And for me, it is that Cobb County becomes a real model for leadership and for solutions, that we inspire other communities because we did something interesting or different and it worked. So as I've shared in other settings, I'm tired of seeing headlines about other countries or other states or other cities. We have all of the talent right here that we should be going viral. Others should talk about the amazing and incredible things that we're doing right here in Cobb County, how we settle different problems for unique communities. So that's my North Star, leadership and modeling. Onward. So what is everybody talking about? A lot of different characters here, and it's supposed to make you chuckle. That's fine. So I made a Wordle. If Cobb County were a person, if you want to know all the different topics, you can see it by the size of the words in that Wordle. That is what a Wordle is. It's like a histogram, but for a picture. So in this case, we see things around safety. We see things around sustainability, master planning, budget, transportation, water, parks, business, diversity. There's Bill, which was the bill that passed recently. MLB found its way on there as well. All things in there. That is who we are, though. Those are the issues that we share. And I also wanted to cover who's here. Who is a part of this conversation? Well, we've got some numbers. 9% of us watching, attending, are from the Josh area. 7%, Powers Ferry area. Smyrna, 15%. East Cobb, 44%. Marietta, 2%. It is the smaller corner of the district. 1% Oakdale, 3% Indian Hills, 3% Cumberland, and 5% Vinings. So you can find yourself in there. Hopefully, all of your communities are covered. And there are the priorities. 9 categories of items that we will be looking at. They're all listed here with the nice, pretty pictures. So I'm going to go through each of them because they're quite extensive. But this is what we're looking to accomplish this year underneath each of these different categories. So number 1, overcoming the pandemic. This should be obvious to everyone. Everyone has felt an impact of the pandemic, whether it be economic, whether it be health-related, mental health-related, having to watch your kids related. All of those things are related to overcoming the pandemic, but not just the current state, but what's the impact long-term, and how do we think about those things? So this includes navigating the health and economic needs. If you see that 147 with a little squiggly line next to it, it means about that much is what we will be receiving from the federal government. So the question to the community here is, where do you think the gaps are? What do you think we need to do? Where do you think there are some things that we did really well last time? And what are some opportunities for where we can improve in terms of disseminating those funds? This also includes improving access to resources. So this is something that came up pretty frequently, not knowing where to go, even though there were a lot of buckets of funds available for different communities. How do you make sure that that's streamlined? And I'll say that the county has done a lot in this effort to do some more due diligence around this and discover where those cracks are and find ways to mend that. But it still made it on the priorities list. Increase mental health awareness. Everyone has a personal story with mental health now. So we wanted to make sure that you can't let a crisis, not benefit in some degree. And so in this case, because everyone now has a personal story tied to mental health issues, this is the perfect time to create mental health awareness and to invest in those resources. So Cobb County has a community services board that's tied to mental health and administering mental health resources and services. We need to make sure that all of our different groups are equipped with what they need to handle the issues that they face. And also understand and map food and medical deserts. Yes, these exist. And yes, they became much, much worse during the pandemic. The pandemic was like a highlighter for some of our issues. So when it came down to these particular deserts, there are 3 components that I'm looking at. It's not just, is there food nearby? It's, is that food nutritious? And do you have access to it? Different demographics, the answer is different. So we have to make sure that we at least identify all of those gaps in our communities so that we can begin preparing a plan for how we can address those gaps. Same goes for medical care. Same kind of issues exist. So made it onto the priorities list. Now, there is a question. And I know that you don't have the form. It was on the first slide with the QR code, but those that are watching can actually access the survey and answer this question. You can follow along with us. And so this is the first question. I'm kind of hinting at the cue here. So you have the app and you're able to answer it. Now, we will not reveal those answers until later, but you can go ahead and record for this question. Second priority here is going to be the 3 Ps of public safety. Raise of hand, show of hands. How many people care about public safety? Our police officers, our firefighters, 911, our EMEA, our emergency services, animal services. Yes, all very, very important. And we need to make sure that they have all the support that they can get because these are very trying times. Different communities are experiencing different facets of public safety. So What made it onto the list here? Community engagement initiatives and pay. So this includes basically looking at ways in which we can incentivize more community engagement. This also includes, for all officers, and this also includes making sure that we are supportive of all of the initiatives that the department has already proposed with regards to community engagement, and that they have all the resources and investments that they need along those lines. This also includes capital investments and improvements. I'll get to some of the wins that we already have, but it was comprehensive in the sense of buildings, but also some new upgrades that some of the buildings needed. So detention center upgrade, new fire station, all of those things came down, but there are more capital investment needs. And really appreciative of the Sheriff's Office for taking a heavy role in making sure that there is real coordination between the Sheriff's Department and our police department in how we can utilize those resources and get creative. There's that word again. This also includes investment in personnel, salary, safety, enabling technologies, and mental health. All of those areas are very important for our officers, that we're providing all of those resources. There are, for instance, there are definitely some salary needs for retention purposes. So this is something that has made the priority list from a conversation standpoint. There are also some opportunities from enabling technologies as well. There are license plate readers. There are cameras in certain areas. There are investments in certain infrastructural pieces to help make sure that we are making a strong presence in different communities. Investment in crime deterrent technologies and community safety investments and initiatives. So there are a lot of community groups that are also really excited to be engaged. And so that has also made the priority list to make sure that they have the access that they need in order to properly work with our public safety, members of our public safety. Fiscal responsibility. This one's really big. So our budget is, as you've heard us mention in some of our board meetings, there are some issues. It's great right now. Everything is moving along. We're able to pay for what we need. The digest came in recently and it was great. We're able to accommodate all of those costs. But what I'm looking at is the long-term sustainability of our budget and how we recruit, retain talent, how we do capital investment, how we make sure that we are really creating that overall environment that workers feel excited to be a part of, even beyond just loving Cobb County, because boy, everyone that works for the county loves Cobb County. So this is really about making sure that the community has full awareness of what is happening with the budget over time. So for this year, what I'm committed to is a series of town halls to talk about this budget, to talk about our overall objectives, to talk about the long-term impacts, and to also create a certain amount of transparency so that we can get very creative with how we can solve some of the issues that are on the horizon. So it's town halls. Creatively address retention and recruiting. I mentioned that as well. So that is there. Not everything requires funding. There are some creative ways to retain talent. So we are open to exploring all of those as well. And really just making sure that that is one of the priorities here. Introducing the taxpayer's receipt. So this will be a fun tool that you'll get to engage with in a few months, where you're able to have full transparency on your tax dollars. You type in how much you've paid, you see where it's all going and how it's being utilized and what that means. And hopefully that will help us as we engage in these conversations moving forward. And also support for nonprofit vendors. This one's very important as well, and I'm happy to address questions on this topic. But nonprofits serve a real purpose when it comes down to helping administer county services. The difference with nonprofits and for-profits, however, is that the nonprofits we were engaged with would get $1 match in the funding that they received. So if we gave them $1, they received $1 from elsewhere. And so whatever the service was that they were administering actually cut our costs in half. So I want to have this conversation. And I want to make sure that we don't necessarily discriminate a nonprofit from a for-profit if they are delivering a service for the county. Environment. And yes, these are in order. The pandemic, safety, the budget, they are in order. So the environment. The Environmental Justice Agreement. So this will be a fun exercise for anyone that is passionate about this area. The idea behind the Environmental Justice Agreement is, as a county, we have jurisdiction over the land, the water, and the air in terms of the last mile, right before you turn on the faucet, that monitoring, all of those things. And I call it last mile environmentalism. So with that, how can we make sure that our residents are empowered with information about their soil, their water, and their air? And so the Environmental Justice Agreement is a list of policies, procedures, and investments that we can make, potentially, in order to empower our people with information about their water, their soil, and their air. And this should go a long way, especially when it comes down to accountability with some of our community corporate partners as well. Develop a 5-year SMART plan. So smart communities is really the same thing of smart cities, but scaled up for the county. And so this is something that I would like to see us endeavor in as a separate initiative or as a consequence of developing that environmental justice agreement, that we are able to turn that into a list of investments for a smart community. Now, the county has done a lot of investment with smart technologies already. There are a lot of wonderful things that we can claim and get excited about and appreciate as a community. What I want to do is rally that around a banner of smart communities so that everyone can participate and get excited about the wins. And there are also some additional areas of investment that I think could be made. But the idea here is to build a plan so that we can look at what a 5-year implementation of some of those programs could look like. And if you're wondering what Smart Cities is as an initiative, it's basically a list of investments, programs that have been formulated that have shown real progress in a lot of other areas in terms of connecting their assets, whether it be human assets or data assets or just any kind of infrastructure, so that you can improve the quality of life around transportation or safety or emergency recovery. Also identify methods to address coal ash and ETO emission concerns. So this, of course, affects several different communities. And coal ash, of course, has the impact around the East Cobb area, honestly, any area around the river. And then also the ETO emissions has a heavy impact on the southern part of our district. While we don't necessarily have a real oversight component to this, it is important that as an environmental endeavor that we look at ways to address those concerns and to have conversations. I'm honestly hoping the Environmental Justice Agreement can identify some of those investments that we can make in order to empower our people with information. And lastly here is to expand Keep Cobb Beautiful. Fantastic, amazing program. And we want to make sure that they are given what they need to do the services that they do, whether it be scaling up recycling. Our staff is very limited, but this is something that a lot of people have asked for, recycling services. It also includes making sure that we put in some funding, some capitalization categories for those that participate, so it goes beyond just the act of cleaning up the area, but also investing in the area. So, mobility plans, also another big one. Everyone around the community, we're pretty excited and ambitious. I love it. So mobility. What I'm committing to here, as you may or may not know, we had a retreat earlier this year where the plan, a comprehensive plan was demonstrated, or a version of a comprehensive plan for us to consider and use in order to make some decisions around some future funding opportunities. All right, so you may have heard of the T-SPLOS, M-SPLOS, and so on. And so in order to make those decisions, we want to make sure that we are listening properly to the community about the different gaps that need to be addressed. And so what I'm committing to here for this year is this series of town halls, to have that dialogue, to have that conversation where we're able to explore the different modalities and the different funding options that are available, because it's a major capital investment, and I want to make sure that everyone understands what it is that we're trying to do together. It also includes supporting study-based transit plans that exist both in the South Cobb redevelopment area and in Cumberland CID. So really just to express my support in these endeavors. I think that they are studies that are well articulated. Doesn't mean that they will happen, but it does mean that I support the results of those studies. It also includes repavement, sidewalks, accessibility, and safety. So we do have some funds that are coming down with regards to sidewalks. And so I will want to make sure that we are prioritizing those properly, and that not just for this year, but looking long term, what that might mean for our community from a sidewalk perspective. And of course, there have been a lot of questions about repavements and making sure that we're having that conversation as well. Safety is brought up here because there are a lot of transit stops where there may be a missing light or a missing bench or a missing shelter. And so this is something that we are looking for creative strategies to see how that can be supported, fixed. And pilot additional transit modalities. So anyone that sat on any of those sessions, you heard me mention the trolley. I am a fan of the rubber tire trolley from a pilot perspective to see if it can help us draw our communities closer with regards to getting youth mobility up, getting them off the streets, or making sure that people are able to frequent their local businesses at a night around the town, a safe night around the town. So looking for the right opportunity to do a pilot. Library revitalization. We are inside of Sewell Mill Library, and it is fantastic. This particular initiative is very similar. Think of it as strategically looking at libraries as economic development centers. Libraries are brick and mortar that exist within every single community, and they represent the fabric of that community. And so we want to make sure that we are giving the resources that these libraries need in order to help address the gaps that are within those local communities. So it's a very community-driven model, but it also creates, when you think of it as an economic development model, it allows you to also say, to foster strategic corporate partnerships with that particular infrastructure, and have some more targeted investments go into those structures so that we can have this nice pipeline of continuous opportunity flowing through the community. And that'll also help with wealth generation and maintenance as well. And then lastly, a database for connectivity. Libraries service so many individuals, and I jokingly share they use GIS maps more than DOT. Probably not exactly true, but they use them way more than you would even think to categorize individuals, trends, what's going on. And I think that's all very important information for us to leverage and utilize, because libraries really do feel the heartbeat of the community. And they offer a lot of different services. A lot of people think they're just books, but they're really not. Planning and affordability. All right. Determine workforce housing model. You've heard workforce housing, you've heard affordable housing. Same concept. How can we make sure that having shelter is affordable for different families at different stages of their home life cycle? is a very complex issue. And so what we're committing to in this is to have that discussion about finding a model that could be sustainable, one that could work, one that doesn't necessarily rely on too many subsidies either. So that's what this is committed to. This also includes community branding and local ownership of zoning and growth decisions. So as some of you may already know, if you've had conversations with me over your respective areas, if you're an alliance, civic association, there are also some that are just getting started. I want to make sure that each of the areas that have been identified, which there are about 9 in this district, are able to have real representation so that anytime a zoning decision comes down, you're immediately a part of that conversation and can help drive it and help us ask the right questions to the developers. So for each of these areas, they're 9 because they're all very distinct in terms of whether they have historical components to it, whether they are primarily residential, or if there's retail that's concentrated, or if walkability is a part of it. All of those things were used to determine these different areas. So that's how the number 9 came about. And master plans with capitalization strategies and proposed town centers for the 9 areas in District 2. It's pretty straightforward. I won't say too much there. And integrate park master plans into the community master plans. So I want to make sure that there's real tie-in there. Parks do maintain they maintain master plans, but I know that parks play a vital role within each of the communities. So making sure that those are integrated into the master plans or expanded upon. Those are real opportunities for those conversations. Youth diversity and inclusion. So the first one is the one that I'm probably the most giddy about, but it's the Youth Board of Commissioners. Now, other counties have youth commissions. What I'm proposing that would make ours a little bit unique here is that these young members of our community would actually have budget, a small amount of budget, but budget to gain that ownership and that accountability and real understanding up close and personal about how government works. And so they would be able to sit, review, maybe it's example, $10,000. They're reviewing those dollars and they're trying to determine who should receive it. And they would then go to the board after they vote amongst themselves, go to the Board of Commissioners and propose that agenda item. And we would have to approve it as well. So it's a really cool way to get that connection in from the youth, but also to get that buy-in and ownership because stuck with our decisions anyway. Establish community board to determine cultural communities ripe for investment. So this one and the next bullet point tie in together, but I use the next bullet point as an example to explain what this second bullet point is. So the third one where it says establish Little Brazil and the Arts Community Arts District, Smyrna Arts District, is really looking at this idea that our county, as I mentioned, is full of diversity. And there exist these enclaves of cultural communities. And some of them, if we just invest a tiny amount, we can generate a really nice destination or ecosystem or thriving infrastructure for that area and beyond. So the example I give is Little Brazil. There is a very heavy population of Brazilians around the Powers Ferry corridor. It's so heavy that people living in Brazil call it Little Brazil, that little spot. I think that's incredible. There is an international magazine ran out of that area. There are lots of Brazilian restaurants in that area. Sounds to me like just a few signs that say welcome to Little Brazil would go pretty far. And there are areas nearby that have been screaming for development for many years. So this is really that opportunity for us to take the lead in how these development decisions get made by planning ahead of time, as opposed to waiting for someone else to come in and then we lose the potential opportunity that we had. Second example is the Arts District. Just a vibrant arts community in Smyrna. They have a festival, they have groups that help propel them. Let's just embrace it. It can be an entire corridor that takes you from Spring Road all the way down to the Performing Arts Center. And so back to number 2. Shouldn't be up to happenstance for us to identify these enclaves. The idea behind this community board is that they would be looking for these enclaves, economic development opportunities by embracing cultural communities. And lastly is to review the non-discrimination ordinance and identify avenues for multilingual application. So for the NDO, this is something definitely looking at from a legal perspective, seeing what the avenues are. Happy to have that. We'll be having conversations on that as well. And if we can find ways to solve some of the gaps with the current template, then this is something that I think that we can do and lead on as a county. This would also include engaging all the nonprofits that are heavily invested in anti-discrimination efforts so that businesses, residents can engage in some of those best practices. And then the multilingual application is pretty straightforward as well. Recreational and wraparound services. So expand reach and access for after-school activities, athletics and opportunities. So really it's making sure that more students are able to participate in some of these recreational activities. More kids are able to. Recruit and support additional nonprofits in financial literacy and other areas. So I have 2 nonprofits personally that I would like to see here in the area. And this is kind of an open invitation for everyone that if there are some that you in a specific gap, happy to have that conversation and maybe add them to the advocacy list. And then improve youth and senior mobility. This also falls underneath it, making sure that there are lots of options for youth and for seniors in our different community areas. As you know, we have 9. So for that app, which you guys also don't have, but the question for the audience is there a priority that you really like, that resonates with you? And obviously you can stay after and tell me the answer to any of these questions. All right, so beyond the big priorities, there are also community priorities that we want to address in a series of community chats to identify actual solutions, because we're not sure what the right pathways are. So we've got major zoning decisions. This comes up very often. Yes, these are the 10 things that come up a lot in email, actually, if you want to know where this data comes from. Yes, I cannot make a public statement on Z72. I apologize, not until I actually hear from the applicant at the hearing. But what I will say is that I am absolutely committed to incorporating the community's perspective and preserving what it is that the community finds characteristic for its area. And I'm also interested in finding the right development opportunities that will help enhance what is unique about that particular area as well. Racing and speeding. So for this particular one, I'm going to invite a friend, phone a friend. Chief Cox, can you join me down here? Thank you. Chief Cox was so gracious too to have a community chat on this particular issue. And so I know I have you up here because there are several items that I'm going to defer to him to give a few points to, but this is the first one. So if you just want to share with everybody on the racing and speeding component.
Sure. Racing and speeding has become a challenge for all of Metro Atlanta and all the law enforcement agencies in the Metro Atlanta area that are dealing with it. There are car enthusiast groups that are legitimate groups that want to have bring attention to their activity. And that aspect of it, we do not want to hamper. We actually hear from some of those community members or those group members saying, hey, we want to promote our car hobby. And as long as it's legal, we're in support of that. But then we also have the aspect that is interested in performing maybe not so legal activities in the area. We've all seen those activities on the news stories and in the media. The challenge that we run into as a police department is we do not always know when those incidents or those events are going to occur. If we're fortunate, we may get an hour's worth of notice, but oftentimes we don't even get any notice, and then we're scrambling to move resources to deal with that particular event. One night it may be in DeKalb County, next night it may be in Kennesaw, then it'll be in Clayton County, then it'll be in Mableton. So it bounces around continuously. How we've addressed it thus far is through some intelligence sources and then moving resources into the areas that we anticipate that will have a problem and meet those groups as they come in. Oftentimes we have a discussion with the group leaders and explain what the boundaries or the rules are that they can participate in. If they want to have a meetup session and look at cars, that's one thing. If they want to have a racing event on Barrett Parkway or on Johnson's Ferry or Roswell Road, then that's unacceptable and will not be tolerated and will be met with enforcement action. While we have had great success at that, we still find ourselves constantly chasing the groups around. But when I say we've had great success, we have seen that where they seem to enjoy the Mableton area, then they shifted more to the East Cobb area and up to the Kennesaw area due to some of the enforcement actions that's been taken by our police department and other police departments in Metro Atlanta. They are trying to broaden their areas and move out into other areas of the larger metro region where they feel like they will meet with less enforcement efforts. So we are, as a police department, open to any suggestions, knowing that we have a number of officers that we can constantly be moving around while still answering the 911 calls. So if you have any suggestions or recommendations, we'll be more than happy to receive those and discuss those and look at see if that was something that could be implemented into what we're already doing.
Thank you. The next topic on here is short-term rentals. So this is something that we hear from across the entire district as well. This is an area where it's going to take for our commissioners, we're going to have to come together and figure out what some possible solutions are, but also in conjunction with some of our community partners, because this is a broad issue and not the easiest necessary. I mean, it's a complex thing to legislate against already. Nonetheless, not an easier feat for the county. Increase in violent crimes. So I am going to call you up again. We, this month, have had a series of increases with regard to the Cumberland area. So we have definitely started the conversations around what's happening. So.
Cobb County has seen an increase in the violent crimes, specifically in the aggravated assaults and the homicide rates. Now, when I say there's an increase, I want to put it in perspective. Our increase in those areas are not to the same numbers as a DeKalb County or a city of Atlanta, but it is an increase from what we've seen over the last 3 to 5 year average. As many of you have seen in the news, there was a shooting at Cumberland Mall. I'll just go ahead and let you know we have made 3 arrests out of that shooting already. There was a shooting just south of there at a theater. I cannot remember the Parkway Point, that's it. And we have made 2 arrests out of that one. In both of those cases, the average age of the suspects were in their late teens to early 20s. We're finding that most of our violent crimes are occurring with individuals from the age of 14 to 23, 24 years old. We're also finding that a lot of those groups that are committing these type of crimes in the county are not necessarily residents of the county, but they're coming from another area of Metro Atlanta. As it's been said previously by one of our homicide majors, a destination, just like Gwinnett County, the north part of DeKalb County, Sandy Springs, Dunwoody. We've become a destination where certain elements and individuals are coming into our communities and may not have an issue with people in our communities, but meeting up with other groups, and that's where they're having these violent shows of force, such as the shooting. Unfortunately, we're seeing that some of the youth are being shot. We had a 6-year-old shot and a 12-year-old who were totally uninvolved, and that's acceptable. So while we are constantly evaluating that, the precinct commanders are constantly looking at their areas and determining what best use of their resources to try to curb that violence. Obviously, we will pursue any violent crime and the suspects and arrest them as soon as possible. And much like the racing show, where we show the sign of enforcement and force, we will do that in any type of other crimes, especially in a homicide or aggravated assault. While also doing that, we're going to, I think we'll see, or I'm hopeful we will see a turn down in some of this in the next few weeks. Due to some other activities that will be occurring in the Cumberland area, there will be a higher increase of police officers working those areas for the next several months. And I'm hopeful that that will cause us a downturn in that. Now, I've said all that to say this is not just a Cobb County issue. This is an issue that is happening all across of Metro Atlanta, all across Georgia, and all across this country. And there's many components that can play into it, and there's many people with opinions as to what is causing this. Some feel like there's a mental health factor. Some feel like there's what is called the war on police or the disrespect of authority. Some feel like there's areas that youth do not have to go to, or the pandemic has been restrictive in the fact that people have not been able to get out and do other things. I'm not going to say my opinion as to what that is, but I will tell you that we're working towards causing those downturns in the areas. And I'm hopeful that we will see, due to some of the plans that we have set forth, we'll see that. Major Bullock is our 3rd Precinct commander and 3rd Precinct in Galleria. And I know he and Deputy Chief Adcock have had extensive conversations on what the next move is for the police department to deal with those areas.
Thank you. Again, very, very robust update on that. Just as a PSA as well, this is something I also heard a little bit of chatter about, a little birdie. Make sure if you are experiencing a crime to report it. I know that some will instead post it in social media or something of the sort, but please call 911 and report it. It will help us collect data that we need in order to service properly. Number 5, stormwater management. Stormwater management. This comes up very frequently. We know that it is a very complex issue. So this is one of those that I will be looking to have more conversations about with the community. Number 6, code enforcement. This comes up frequently as well. I mean, our staff is doing everything that they can, but we are looking at how we can maybe increase the capacity of that team. But as of right now, just wanted to make sure that you all saw it's something that we're looking at and that we talk about. Site inspections, same goes there. We get a lot of requests about how can we make sure that after development has been approved, that it is actually consistent with what they said they were going to do. So this is another thing that we are looking at to see from a process standpoint, what can be done, what can be taken on. Number 8, controversial business operations. Due to legal concerns, I didn't want to list out some of these, but we do get frequent emails on these topics as well. And just know that these things are working their way through the courts. Number 9, gun safety. So this comes up in all areas as well. So what I have shared with different constituents is that I would like to host a community chat on what gun safety means for different communities and how we can embrace it as a community. So that is my commitment there. And number 10, animal services and protection. So this also comes up very frequently as well. This is another area where we're looking to maybe do some increase of capacity, because it seems that's one of the issues with making sure that this executes in the speed that some may be looking for. Before I move off, are there any other comments that you want to give on any of the topics?
Sure. I'd like to add one other comment. The commissioner mentioned gun safety, and obviously that is a concern for all citizens within our county. And I know the sheriff is here with us this evening. That is something the police department, and I'm sure the sheriff's department, would be more than willing to have conversations with, assist with, whether it be in a broader meeting or whether it be in much smaller HOA type meetings with precinct commanders. So if you have that desire to have those conversations, please let us know. And myself, our precinct commanders, or I'm sure anyone in the sheriff's department would be more than happy to participate in those discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. And before I move off of this slide, Sheriff, are there any other words? Are there any additional words that you want to give to any of these topics? Because I know you've been working in collaboration and rolling out some interesting models for us as well. That's fine.
I'll just add that I think the police department's done an outstanding job, and we'll provide any assistance that we can to provide extra presence in these areas coming forth in the future. So anything that the sheriff's office can do to reduce violent crime, we'll definitely participate and help the police department if they need it, with increased presence of sheriff deputies as well. So we are partnership in this, and we work very well with the chief and the sheriff's, with the police department, and we'll provide any assistance going forward as needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we miss anything? Is the other question that's on the tool. Obviously, you can let me know afterwards as well. And if you do have questions, please just write them down and hold them for the end, because we do have a lot of content, obviously, that we're moving through. Just know future town halls won't have all of the front loading. Around the county updates. Elephant in the room. MLB. Yes. So we did lose the All-Stars, but we still have a lot more in Cobb County to do. There's a lot more to look forward to. We understand that it is a very complex conversation that's taking place with regards to the state legislation and the protest or the boycott, and the MLB and some of the other decisions that other corporations are making. But what I want to make sure of is that the community is all in knowing that Cobb County has so much to offer, and that we will not run out of opportunities, but that we're also fairly committed to making sure that there is access to voting, that we will address any gaps that have been identified, that we will work together, that we will really set that model, right? The chair mentioned it in the best terms, turn lemons into lemonade. Now, like I said, there are some real issues and discussions that need to take place on that bill, and that is something that I want people to stay engaged with, do stay engaged with all pieces of legislation, but definitely that one as well. But we also have to make sure the county continues on, and that there are still opportunities for our businesses, that there are still opportunities for our residents to enjoy everything that we have to offer. So I have much longer statements, but I did want to just, we are looking at this. So what are some of the things that come to mind? What happens to the budgeted funds? That comes in a lot as a question. The real answer is we'll find out the actual truth, but the short answer is those funds get automatically returned. We as a board will have to determine, do we want to still make some of those investments? Because some of those investments were for the county, period. And so we have that conversation ongoing, but there really hasn't been any spend associated with those budgeted funds. What about the economic opportunity So you've seen estimates of around 100 million that we've potentially lost. We're just going to have to find a new $100 million opportunity as a community. That is what we have to do as leaders here. And so what I'm asking for from everybody here is to make sure that you support small businesses, that you support large businesses, that you support all of those that find a home here in the county. And if you have other ideas of things, of events, opportunities, that you bring those to the table. Were any initiatives impacted? Yes, the trolley concept was impacted. I did see that as a great opportunity for us to get people to and from the ballpark to enjoy the different activities and know that your child or your family would be safe engaging in those activities. But there will be another way to look at those different modalities. So that is the elephant in the room. And then general questions is how would you like to support our businesses, our local economy here? For our audience. So other things to get really excited about. The last 3 months have been very, very active at the county. These are some of the big ticket items, the rental assistance program, the call center. There are a lot of questions about the call center. Happy to go into details on that as well. But this was to help with getting people to resources for vaccines, but also a long-term strategy around constituent services with regards to the county needs. Step and grade payment, that's for our police officers. And actually it was for public safety altogether, so apologies there. Medical examiner's office and lab, cabinet shop, fleet services shop, detention center upgrades, sheriff, hopefully it makes you really happy, makes us all happy. Making sure that we had the new purchasing director that was hired in as well. Acres Mill managed lane access, road resurfacing, drainage system improvements, Windy Hill Terrell Mill connector, Willio Road over Willio Creek Bridge, Silver Comet Trail connector, Circle 75 Parkway, Windy Hill safety improvements, the Unicorn Fire Station. Some of you probably wonder, what does that mean? So there's a fire station that was promised in 2014, but it had not been built, had not had the land for us to build on. And in this latest revenue above projections, we were able to provide the funding for that land. And it's called Unicorn because no one had ever seen it before. West Atlanta Street Trail. So everything that you see in green is outside of District 2, but things that we will also benefit from and enjoy. So the last thing I'm going to call out here is I mentioned the revenue over projections, the three numbers that you see there. So there was 114 million over projection, 46 million is what went to all the districts, and about 18 million came to District 2. And the other portion of that went to countywide type of infrastructural investments. Yay. And now I'm going to stop talking, and I would like for my chamber to come up. Thank you so much.
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioner Richardson, for having me this evening. My name is Stephanie Cox, and I am the Director of Existing Industry at the Cobb Chamber and with Select Cobb, which is the economic development entity within the Chamber. I'm excited to be with you this evening. I realize I haven't started that yet, so we'll go there. Is to share some of the Chamber's economic recovery efforts over the past year, as well as some of the 2021 economic development wins we've seen so far here in District 2. Just like other organizations and businesses in our community, 2020 was a year of changes for our organization as well. In an effort to do whatever we could to assist in recovery, we began several different efforts, a few of which I will touch on this evening. Since the onset of the pandemic, the Chamber and Select Cobb have hosted over 20 business recovery webinars, ranging on a variety of topics. You see a couple on the slide behind me. We found that this is a fast and efficient way to help bring together experts across many different fields to help answer questions and disseminate information in a timely manner. With all the changes over the last year to the stimulus programs, we've continued these conversations in an effort to share pertinent updates, answer questions from businesses about how these programs affect individual companies here, and then also provide additional resources for our community. Our latest webinar was just 2 weeks ago, and we discussed the next round of changes to the PPP2 program, as well as the employer retention tax credit and how companies can take advantage of these programs. So as an organization, we've continued to provide resources for companies in and around Cobb. At the onset of the pandemic, we created a one-stop website to help organize a list of resources for companies to take advantage of. Since the launch of the website, we've had about 20,000 visitors to that site, and it includes valuable resources, including a reopening guideline toolkit for companies to help reopen their physical spaces and learn best practices from what we've learned, recorded copies of those webinars I mentioned as well, financial assistance information, job openings in and around Cobb, as well as additional community partner resources. In 2020, we sent over 50 resource emails updating over 17,000 business leaders in an effort to, again, help disseminate that information as quickly and efficiently as possible. Operation Meal Plan was one of our very first recovery efforts in partnership with the Cobb Community Foundation. It was an effort for small business and nonprofit support initiative that we created with the Cobb Community Foundation and the Center for Family Resources, as well as other nonprofits here in Cobb. The goal was to provide food to those in need, help local restaurants keep their workers employed, and provide a vehicle for citizens to help each other. Operation Meal Plan was supported through a tax-deductible, community-backed fund and fulfilled through participating restaurants right here in Cobb County. The program was able to serve over 13,000 meals in May and April of last year. 25 nonprofits benefited and 22 restaurants participated in the program. In an effort to continue to stimulate Cobb's economy, we continued our recovery efforts by launching cobbhires.com. The purpose of the job board is to connect companies hiring with talent here and in and around Cobb. The board includes both job opportunities and internship opportunities, which are becoming more popular in our area as well. We also launched Cobb Shops to Go and other small business marketing campaigns to share what local companies were offering and to help drive customers to think and shop local. Finally, we also led partners in education efforts to gather business donations to help schools with needed resources as they prepared for their reopening efforts. So behind the scenes, we were also advocating to rebuild our local economy at the local and federal levels. On the federal level, we advocated and joined chamber partners nationwide to voice our support for every one of the federal stimulus rounds to help fund that PPP program and all the changes to it, as well as other financial stimulus programs for industries in need. In addition, we advocated for the passage of the 2022 SPLOST renewal, and our organization felt that the SPLOST renewal was critical for Cobb's future, and we were thrilled with its passage in November. One of our largest efforts was centered on a partnership with Cobb County to distribute nearly $50 million in small business relief grants. The 6-month project was made possible by the Federal CARES Act funding and voted on by the Cobb Board of Commissioners. The grant was administered by our team, both at the Chamber and at Select Cobb. 3,715 Cobb companies, received grants as part of the program. And grant recipients were across all geographic areas of Cobb and included dozens of different industries. So what does that look like here for District 2? We specifically in District 2, the program impacted over 1,000 companies. In round 1, 122 grants were given in District 2, representing over $2.2 million. And then in round 2, 939 companies were approved for grants, representing over $11.7 million. So in total, 1,061 companies were granted funds, representing over $14 million. From an economic development perspective, District 2 has already seen 4 project wins for 2021. We have 2 recruitments and 2 retained companies here within the district. The industries include technology, finance, headquarters, and insurance. And our project activity for Cobb has remained consistent over the past year, and we're optimistic that we will have more project wins to share with you in the coming months. Thank you again for your time this evening, and thank you for having us, Commissioner. Our team at the Chamber and Select Cobb are always available to help businesses and citizens of District 2. We appreciate the opportunity to connect with District 2 constituents and look forward to sharing more economic development successes with you in the future. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioner Richardson. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here this evening and share a little bit about the work at the Cumberland Community Improvement District. I'm Kim Menifee, and I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Director of the Cumberland CID. And I have a couple of updates for you, but what I wanted to do is just share briefly what we are and what really how we focus our work. Is a CID is made up of commercial property owners in the district who pay an additional property tax that we then leverage with our partners, Cobb County being our primary partner, our state and federal partners, to really advance key infrastructure and transportation projects in and around the Cumberland area. We focus our projects on access, improving connectivity, as well as building character in the district. The Cumberland CID is the oldest in Georgia. We're 33 years old and really have worked to transform the Cumberland area over that period of time. So I had a couple of projects that I thought may be of interest to you that really focus on these different goals that we have. The first one being as part of our character building. Not only do we have 3,400 businesses within the Cumberland CID, we now have over 30,000 residents in the Cumberland area, as well as thousands of visitors each and every day. So one of our programs is our bike share program, and wanted to make sure that you all are aware of it. As you noted here, we have 7 bike stations located in and around the Cumberland area. We have 35 bikes. The company that we work with, you'll see here is, it says the Movotic app. So you can go on your phone and download the app. The program is, it's actually free the first hour and then just $3 an hour after that. But we're really fortunate in the Cumberland CID because we have 2 national park units within our district. We have 840 acres of parkland within the Cumberland district. So we have 2 bike stations there. And then you see here noted that we have one at the Battery Atlanta and then other locations around the district. So just want to invite you to take advantage of those. The CID has also invested over these years in creating a trail network that connects beyond the CID over to many Cobb County trails, also into the Smyrna area, the Silver Comet Trail, and just invite you to take advantage of those. And we developed a website called cumberlandtrails.org that you see noted there. That'll tell you all about the trails that are within the district. So then switching gears, I wanted to share an update. Let's see. On one of our major transportation projects. The commissioner mentioned earlier the Acres Mill ramp. And this ramp is a project that CID led and working with our partners, Cobb County, and those that you see noted there, GDOT, ARC, CERTA, and USDOT. We were able to assemble funding to really add this access ramp to the I-75 Northwest Express Lanes project. If you recall, this opened in 2018. It's been a very successful project, offering really time saving in the mornings and the evenings to commuters who use the express lanes. So this ramp will actually provide access down to Acres Mill Road. And in the mornings and in the evenings, provide that easy access to the express lane system. We have over 100,000 commuters into the district on a daily basis. So this project has been really well received, and we're very excited to be where we are today. We plan to break ground this fall, and this ramp will open in 2023. So I see Erica Parrish here with Cobb DOT, and truly we couldn't do this without their support, our commissioner's support, and are just really excited to be at this point to be able to bring the ramp forward. So with that, that concludes my report. And Sherry, come on up. Appreciate it.
Hello, I'm Sherry Martin, and I'm President and CEO of Cobb Community Foundation. And our dream is for Cobb County and everyone in it and around it to thrive. And so what we do is work to help those who serve and give in Cobb County to do so with greater impact. One of the things that we did last year, and I will tell you there have been lots of opportunities to help make an impact over the past year. One of the things that we started off with was creating something called the Cobb COVID-19 Community Response Fund. And this was a fund that we created so that anyone who wanted to make sure that their dollars were going to an organization that was serving Cobb County and helping those who had some type of need that arose as a result of COVID, many of those needs being economic, that we had a pool of resources to help. We did not require any form of application from nonprofits. We knew that they were focused on helping those in the community, and we did not want, frankly, to take their resources and time away from doing that. So our job was to make sure that we had our finger on the pulse of the community by talking with those who were serving on a regular basis. And we use these funds to fill the gaps. And you were talking about being creative earlier, Commissioner. We were very creative with these funds. So you'll see that the largest bulk of these funds went toward food. When you looked at the resources that were being made available through the government and the various CARES Act funding that was out there, a significant amount went to rental assistance and mortgage assistance. So we focused on filling that gap. You may recall back in April, the Cobb Community Foundation asked the Board of Commissioners if they would allocate a first $1 million of CARES Act funding for food, and they did. But it took a while to get to that point. And during the 6 weeks between the time that the schools closed and that funding was available, the need for food in Cobb County increased by threefold. So we stepped in and made a grant of about $30,000 in total to the various nonprofits that provide food, just allocating it out based on how much food they provide. They needed something to keep them going because they did not have the resources to continue to buy food. It was also a time when the Atlanta Community Food Bank was under a great demand as well. So the resource there was not able to meet the need. So we helped with that. The second largest component here is education, but that is not traditional education. One of the largest grants that we made was to the Cobb school system. And that grant was to enable the social workers who work at the school to remain employed over the summer. Now, for me, I just never thought about the fact that, of course, social workers, they work for the school. The social workers who work for the school system aren't working during the summer. But this was a summer when those families who worked with those social workers needed them more than ever. Those social workers were the lifeline to resources for many individuals. And so we actually funded 5 social worker positions continuing through the summer months. So those are just a couple examples of what we did during this time with the COVID funds. We've got about $50,000+ remaining and are figuring out how we're going to best distribute those going forward. I would tell you we are still accepting contributions, and just know that anything that you send for that fund is going to go to an organization that is serving Cobb County. This Okay. I had some animations in here, so it looks like but that's okay. I can tell the story without slides. This is my favorite story of all. Cobb Community Food Fleet. Cobb Community Food Fleet is an initiative that actually started with the federal government USDA program. You all may remember seeing pictures of crops being tilled under and milk being poured down the drain at the beginning of the pandemic because of the disruption to the food supply. Well, the USDA stepped in and they provided funding to food distributors who had to bid on the project for which states they would cover. And the funding that they were provided, they would use to purchase fresh food and produce, fruits. Wonderful food boxes came about as a result of this. So they would buy the food from the farmers, they would package it, and they would deliver it to communities in need. So if you are a food distributor, and by the way, there's only one that is now serving 4 states in the Southeast, including Georgia. So if you're that food distributor, you want to make sure that wherever you're delivering that food, it's really easy for you to get it there. You don't want to deliver 10 pallets here and 5 pallets there and 8 pallets there. You want to maximize your time. We wanted to be sure that Cobb County was going to receive what it needed. And I have to tell you, the Braves were an amazing partner. They stepped up. We called them when we read that they had emptied out their refrigerator from their home plate program, where they prepared meals and delivered them throughout all of Metro Atlanta and beyond. So we said, hey, your refrigerator's empty? And the season, we don't know when it's going to start, and you've got these big loading docks. They have allowed for the entire period of time since last May until now, except for the time period when they're actually playing or preparing to play baseball, we have had anywhere from 1 semi-truck to 3 semi-trucks a week, bringing in right now about 4,000 35-pound boxes of food that the folks who work for the Braves in Delaware North are unloading from those trucks that bring them in. We have an additional truck there that is a rider. Did you know, by the way, that a refrigerated trailer is called a reefer? I did not know that. I thought that word had another meaning. But we have a reefer that has been parked at the stadium that holds the freezer food, because they're using their freezer at the stadium. We have 10 different nonprofits who are coming in and picking up food all throughout the week. They're going out and distributing that food to 48 different locations across Cobb County. Since end of May of last year, 2.2 million pounds of food that we have not had to pay a dime for have come in through the Farmers to Families program. And if you want to talk about collaboration and community coming together, you had the Braves who are providing the manpower. We're using their pallet jacks and all the other things that I didn't even know existed until all this. We're using their equipment, their people. When the season started, Sweetwater Mission allowed us to use their backyard. Gordon Food Service provided 2 refrigerated trailers because we didn't have a big refrigerator to use, so we put the food in there. We then worked it out with the Cobb Galleria, who became the other site there where we're operating right now. And we still have that 4,000 boxes of food coming in every week that have worked out to be 1.9 million meals. This is an incredible example of collaboration. And I cannot help but throw in there that S.A. White Oil Company, Kim Gresh, who's the owner of that company, serves on our board of directors. Those reefers, they require fuel. And Mobilize Fuels, which is their sister company, has transported the fuel 3 times a week since last May to fill those reefers. And S.A. White has provided the fuel free of charge. It's been an incredible partnership, and we are so honored to be a part of it. And I cannot believe I failed to say Noonday Association of Churches has served as point on this entire project. And you're seeing nonprofits work together as they never have before to make sure that our community has the food that it needs. Cobb Community Connection. This is my last slide. So this is a tool that we created a few years ago. And the story behind it is when I first came into this job, I asked the question in one of my first few days, so where can I find a list of all of Cobb's nonprofits? And everybody laughed at me. I did not think it was a rhetorical question. I really thought there would be a source. Well, there wasn't. So we decided to create one. And so Cobb Community Connection is an online repository of Cobb nonprofits. It tells you who they are, what they do, where they do it, and what they need. If you are looking for help, you can go to cobbconnection.org and you can sort for any type of need that you might have, and it will identify the nonprofits and provide you all the information you need to call them or to contact them. The other thing that it does is it will show you where you can give, how you can help. So you can find help, you can give help. Volunteer opportunities, financial needs of these nonprofits. It is an incredible resource for them as well as those in need. And it became really important during the pandemic, particularly early on. And we discovered that there are a lot of nonprofits out there, a lot of services that a lot of people don't know about because they don't have internet. They don't have social media. And that's the way a lot of this communication happens. And so we took advantage of our food fleet and the fact that we were at 48 different locations throughout Cobb County. And we had 75,000 of these cards printed, English on one side, Spanish on the other, that we put inside those food boxes so people would know where they could find help. And that actually inspired the county to come behind us and printed individual flyers that not only had this on there, but also talked about here's where you can go for rental assistance. Here's where you can go to find jobs. And again, we've used the food fleet as a mechanism for distributing that information. So it has been a whirlwind of a year, but we have made an impact. And I've got the best job in the world because I can say that. Thank you so much, Commissioner.
And then next, we've got Charisse. Your bullet point.
All right, thank you. Good evening. Hello. Sherry, thank you for everything you did with the school district. It's awesome. I'm Sherry Davis. I am the Cobb County School Board member for Post 6, which includes Walton and Wheeler High Schools, and now Cobb Horizon High School, which was just moved into the 30339 area code. I, of course, represent their feeder schools, plus Teasley Elementary and Argyle Elementary, which are in the Smyrna Vinings area. And for those that may not know me, I'm a longtime educator and librarian and the parent of 2 sons in our public schools. Thank you, Commissioner Richardson, for having me here today to give you some updates regarding the Cobb County School District and Post 6. Before I begin, please note that I'm just one member of the 7-member board, and so I do not speak for the entire board. So, pandemic. As you all are very much aware, the last year upended the way that we operate. We went from being solely remote in the spring of 2020 to offering both the choice for in-person and remote learning to all of our over 107,000 students this school year. Next school year, we are offering a choice of remote learning or in-person to all of our students just next year for elementary, and as part of a new online learning experience, which will be called Cobb Online Learning Academy for grades 6 through 12. Remote learners will be taught by dedicated remote learning instructors. Our teachers have yet again risen to the occasion and taken on the very difficult task of teaching students that are both at home and in the building, or the roomies and the zoomies, as they're affectionately called. Recently, and in partnership with the Cobb Douglas Department of Public Health, arrangements were made to give Cobb County school staff the ability to get vaccinated against COVID-19. In the upcoming weeks, staff that elected to receive their vaccine through the district will be able to receive their second dose. Families are still able to receive free weekly meals through the nutrition department for children ages 0 to 18, and this has been made possible through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. In November, we will be coming to you yet again to ask you to approve our next EdSPLOST. And so that will be EdSPLOST 6, which would begin in 2024. EdSPLOST allows the district to collect a 1% sales tax for facilities, maintenance, and technology expenses. Virtually all of Georgia's school districts have EdSPLOST and rely on this as a way to improve and build facilities and embark on technology initiatives. There will be a notebook developed in conjunction with school-based leadership, and these will identify the facility needs before the vote is taken. And so you'll be able to see that very soon. We would be here all night if I were to list out all of the accolades of our wonderful schools in Post 6 and in Cobb, but I'm just going to highlight some of our high schools today and some of the great things going on there. Wheeler High School won back-to-back state 6A basketball championships. Walton and Wheeler were given AP honors by the College Board, and one of our Walton High School teachers was selected as a NASA ambassador. Wheeler High School is one of only 13 Georgia public schools to recently earn the College Board Computer Science Female Diversity Award for achieving high female representation in AP Computer Science or AP Computer Science Principles courses. And a team of Walton High School students recently won their regional competition for the 2021 National Science Bowl, which is sponsored by the U.S. Department of Energy. Additionally, the district's graduation rate has been climbing with the class of 2020, earning a graduation rate of 88.6%, a 1.6 percentage increase from 2019 and the highest yet. All of our graduation ceremonies this year will be held in person and will be held at the McEachern Stadium, and we look forward to celebrating our graduates who have endured an entire school year like no other. Lastly, we have some federal funds coming, as many communities do. The most recent round of federal funding to schools is the American Rescue Plan Act, which you might know, and it will send $160 million to Cobb County schools. At least 20% must be spent to address learning loss, and there is flexibility in allocating the rest towards student needs. This follows, of course, CARES Act 1 and 2 funding that went to communities and schools around the nation. And discussion around this funding and our general budget should happen in upcoming board meetings that are coming up over the next few months. Our meetings are held once a month, and you can always stream our meetings or watch a replay of them. In closing, I just want to invite you all as community members. I would encourage you to find ways to plug in to what is going on in Cobb County schools. Learn who your board member is, hold them and the entire school board accountable, ask questions, email, speak at public comment. Find ways to get involved in making your local schools the best place they can be. Beyond the PTA and parent foundations, there are principal advisory councils and the Cobb Schools Foundation, which offers support to students and schools all over the county. If you're able to support this Cobb Schools Foundation and the good work they're doing under the direction of our Executive Director, Felicia Wagner, please do so. And you can visit cobbschoolsfoundation.org for more information. I wish our staff and students a safe and relaxing spring break this week. Most of them are at the beach already, but thank you all for your time and support of our schools. Thank you.
All right, so thank you, Commissioner, for putting this together. It's a really good group of positivity coming from what we're doing in Cobb County, and also to the police chief and sheriff for your participation in the conversation as well. I just hope I'm not a wet blanket on what has been a good meeting. And I'll start by being the wet blanket. I didn't bring slides, so you don't have to worry about looking up there. It's just, if you know, we just finished our session, and I am still recuperating and wish I was at a beach. But our 40 days of legislative session ended last Wednesday at about 12:16 a.m. So really Thursday, April 1st. So the joke was anything that passed after midnight had to be a joke. And I've got a list of those, but I won't go through them. But I will say the delegation had a very productive year. There's a lot of collaboration that happens between our delegation. I would say we are probably one of the more functioning delegations in the state. So all of the Cobb legislators in both the House and the Senate put in a lot of work this year and really produced some good results for Cobb County. I do want to go ahead and paint the nose red on the elephant and talk about it first. Commissioner talked about it a little bit, but the bill that's received the most attention, which is now law because it passed the Senate, House, and was signed by the governor, is SB 202, the elections bill. It has a lot in it. It's 98 pages of legislation. I think there are still some analysis being done by different groups. You've probably heard a lot of information on both sides of this conversation. I would challenge everyone to read it as much as you can, find a trusted source, and really get the information that's out. And I'm going to be continuing to work with our commissioners and Janine Evler, our chair or head of elections here in Cobb County, to make sure that things get implemented in the right way. Also specific to Cobb, SB 6, and that's the only bill number I'll use again. People's eyes gloss over when I started naming and numbering bills. But this was a tax incentive that included an incentive for Lockheed Martin. And it was extremely important because this could potentially bring hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs to Cobb County by leveling the playing field of what other states are doing with manufacturers in this area. So working with the chamber, working with Lockheed Martin, with Dobbins, we were able to get that passed, and hopefully we'll see some benefit from that here locally in Cobb County. Some of the other major legislation that passed, the repeal of citizens arrest, that was carried by Cobb County Floor Leader Burt Reeves, who's one of the governor's floor leaders. That did pass. It was a second phase of some of the reforms that came, starting with the reaction from the Ahmaud Arbery case last year, moving into citizens arrest this year. So hopefully those will continue. We'll continue to see more progress in some of those justice issues that are very prevalent in front of mind right now. Something else that passed that I've gotten a lot of questions about is moving to daylight savings time permanently. By passing that legislation, that does not guarantee that we go into daylight savings time permanently. That still has to be a congressional act. And God knows right now when we say act of Congress, we really mean it. But that would have to pass. What it does is puts us in line with surrounding states who have already made that decision to move into permanent daylight savings time if the federal government approves it. Those states, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, and I believe one of the Carolinas has already passed that. So it would have prevented a very awkward situation if we didn't do that, to where Georgia, if that was implemented, would be one of the only states kind of in the Southeast not participating in daylight savings time year round. So that's something that passed as well. And then the one thing that we're required to do every year, which is pass a budget. We did that at about 11:16, not 12:16, but 11:16, about an hour before we went home on the last day. And some of the good highlights about the budget this year is it did restore some of the funding that was cut to K-12 education last year. Last year, because of the anticipated digest issues that we were going to have with the pandemic, there's about $1 billion cut out of K-12 education. That was refunded. About $650 million was put back in. So it wasn't a full restoration. But due to some of the American Rescue Plan money, and as Sharice talked about, the $160+ million that Cobb School is going to get, we think is going to fill that gap. We think we're going to be okay. So I think schools have been one of the biggest benefactors. And the police chief talked about mental health. And those that know and follow me know that's a huge concern of mine and something I'm a huge advocate for. And there was a tremendous amount of additional mental health funding put into this budget. I don't think we are still fully understanding the impacts of being locked in our homes for a year. And the ability to provide those services across the state, and especially in the counties with our community service boards, is extremely, extremely important. We have jails that are filling up right now with people who need to be in mental health hospitals. And we have a majority of not a majority, but a significant amount of the issues that we're having that our police department and sheriff's department are dealing with potentially are stemming from mental health issues. And so we need to make sure we continue to fund those things, and this budget is reflective of those priorities. A couple of things that failed that I think people were following and interested in. One is raising the adult criminal age from 17 to 18. That failed and will probably be revisited next year in some form. The distracted driving loophole, right now there's a provision that requires for a warning to be given first. We were looking to close that. That passed the House, did not pass the Senate. So we'll probably come back. And the online sports betting really came up in multiple forms. If you've been following the legislature, there's been a lot of conversation about what I call the three-tier gambling bills. But you've got the horse racing, which did not make it past House committee. You've got casinos, which did not even get a hearing this year in committee. And then you've got the online sports betting, kind of your FanDuel, your DraftKings, those online games. The Senate passed a version of the online sports betting. The House passed it out of committee, but could not move it forward to the floor. There was some debate whether or not a constitutional amendment was needed. The amendment was drafted. It was brought before committee, passed out of committee, but didn't come to the floor for a vote. So all of those are open for debate next year. We have a biennial session, so anything that didn't pass this year is eligible to be heard and passed next year. So those are things that didn't get passed. They didn't necessarily die, but they will be kicked off to next session. Two things that I wanted to bring up that are going to be very active topics for the delegation over the summer. One is redistricting. The census data should be in sometime in September. From what I'm hearing right now, we should likely be called back into special session in November to do the reapportionment for congressional, state and local lines. So just be aware that that's something that's going to happen. And once again, something that everybody is probably aware of, but we have 4 different cityhood movements that are going on right now in Cobb County. As chair of the delegation, I wanted to make sure that all 4 were introduced this year at the same time, so that as we start to talk with stakeholders and move around the county and really look at these, we could really look at it from a holistic standpoint of what will be the impact to Cobb County. And if you're not aware, there's a West Cobb cityhood movement for Lost Mountain, the city of Vinings in District 2, the city of South Cobb, Mableton in District 4, and East Cobb, which is closer to where we are right now. So those 4 have all been filed as legislation. They'll all be doing their studies, and we will be looking and evaluating each of those, as all of them are slated, if feasible, to move next year so that they can be on a referendum for 2022. Now, that's not to say that all 4 will move to that stage. But we have to be prepared and have a conversation over the next couple of months of what that impact is going to be and what services these 4 cities, all of them have a different variety of. In Georgia, you're required to only have 3 services that you provide. And all of them have taken some of the lower tier services, zoning, parks and rec. One has just, trash pickup is their 3rd, none of the major public service or any other infrastructure type offerings. So we really need to look at what that impact is going to be to the county as those 4 cities and their conversations move forward. With that, I think that's all I've got. No slides, couple of notes, and Jerica promised I didn't have to take questions, so I'm gonna go sit down.
I just want to say, what a fantastic job by all of our guest speakers, right? And round of applause for them. Thank you. And I want to make sure before I get into this last section about the frequently asked questions, Director Ross Cavett, thank you so much for everything that you're doing behind the scenes, in front of the scenes. You help keep everyone informed, and we really appreciate that. And also want to give a thank you to my administrative assistant, Aaliyah, who runs everything. She holds it down for me, guys. And Jamie as well, who is one of my office interns. And if you've heard of the community cabinet, she's the one that's helping orient everybody and keep them, focused on really looking at the community issues that we can address. So here are some of the frequently asked questions. Appreciate you bringing up the cityhood components. That was one of the things that came up, or that comes up very frequently. Now, what are your thoughts on East Cobb cityhood and cityhood in general? Yes. So I committed that I would answer all of the FAQs here. My answer is very much the same as it was last time around. I have 3 things that I look for: feasibility, viability, motivation, and then the ballot language. And so in the last study, I followed very closely. I was very, I did articulate what my stance was on that particular movement, that I was not in favor of it. That being said, every study is very different, and I'm always open to hearing what the community has to say. My criteria just does not change, because those factors are very important when we talk about long-term sustainability of a city. And cityhood in general, I have no personal issue with cities in general. Just, yeah, I look for those 3 criteria. Sure, thank you. Forgot I had a mask on. Number 2, how do you feel about high density development? So I don't have any personal feelings associated with high density development. However, I do believe that when there is high density, there are other considerations that have to go into that, whether it be transportation related, crime related, how people interact. You usually have less interaction between communities of high density. So really looking at all those different dynamics and making sure that when planning an area of high density, that those things are considered, that there are places for people to interact, because that tends to help build a community. The Riverlands project and the Chattahoochee Trail project. Short answer, yes, I do. I think it'll be a great asset and benefit to the community. I'm a big believer in trails and beautification projects as well. And how do we embrace that in terms of enhancing our trail networks? Support access to voting and voting rights. Yes, this, I believe Chair Cupid has also articulated as one of the priorities, making sure that we are looking holistically at elections. I mean, this is an operational component. How do you make sure that elections are safe, that everyone is able to vote, that everyone's able to exercise that right? And so we know that, that with the changes with SB 202, that there will be some increased costs associated with it. As if you may have listened in on the work session with Janine Eveler, she did a really great overview of all of the downstream impacts. So those are all things that we are definitely taking into consideration. No law that you see passed by the state is without consequence. There are always consequences in unfunded mandates. So we are looking at all of those ins and outs and making sure that there is no impact to voters. And how do I feel about upcoming zoning decisions? I referenced earlier, I can't make any public statements on the current ones before hearing from the applicant, but I am committed to making sure that all of our zoning decisions actually represent the community, and that that the development that is being proposed fits within the character of what the community is looking for, and helps to grow and enhance the quality of life of those areas. And yeah. So my question was back to the community. How do you feel about cityhood? And this question will give multiple options on the actual questionnaire. And lastly, did you learn anything? And what else would you like to see? I want to hear feedback. Our quarterly reports are obviously very informative, heavy information. All of our other town hall chats are very bi-directional. We have the Z72 town hall coming up on Thursday. If you are a part of the other one, I read the questions right off of there, and we just have that conversation. If you were part of any of the other town halls, whether it was to address speeding or racing, street racing, those are all very communicative type of town halls. But I do want everyone to be clear, this is really so that you have information about what has transpired and enables you to make some decisions and also be a part of some of these upcoming conversations. So I think that's all I have to present. And time check, what are we at? Are we well after? What time do we have? 8:17. Yes. Okay. So I will take, I think, Ron, you have one question. Go ahead and ask, and then I will conclude our event, but I will stay after to talk one-on-one. You want to come up to the microphone? Thank you. Sure.
Just real quick before you ask this question, there's one thing I was going to say that I forgot. I get this in my inbox like 200 times a week. The fireworks legislation did not move this year, but we are revisiting to make sure that we can give local control back to the cities and counties to regulate fireworks. We hear you. We understand all the issues around it. They are getting completely out of control, but that is something that should come back up next year as well.
Thank you.
So thank you. And I have other issues we can discuss offline, but I wanted to come back to stormwater management. I know Jill is here. She may have similar views or maybe not, but on stormwater management, that's been a very important issue for a very long time. And a lot of community advocates, not just me, have been trying to address that. There are two, if you're going to look at it, there are two really important issues for you to look at. Cobb County has always addressed stormwater management from a standpoint of property-specific stormwater management. But the question that community advocates have been raising for many years is, has that proven in reality to be inadequate? Because over the last 20 years, there is a lot of property that floods today that didn't flood 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, there's a lot of property that began flooding that didn't flood 20 years before that. And our question is, we think Cobb County needs to look at stormwater management holistically and make an honest assessment of whether our very limited property-specific stormwater management is adequate to address the cumulative effect of all of the development that's taken place over the years. The other question that needs to be raised is, going back to property-specific stormwater management, the rule is no more stormwater comes off the property after development than before. But the problem is that doesn't mean that that applies 360 degrees. It could be that less water comes off over here, but more stormwater comes off over here, flooding adjacent properties over here. And that's just simply not addressed. And one person that you could talk with about that I'm almost positive has been a victim of that, is Commissioner Gambrill. So it's a widespread problem. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to look at this issue, I would really encourage you to have an honest assessment done looking at all that. And I would welcome Jill to jump in on this if she has anything to add or disagree with.
Thank you. Just to address your point, for stormwater management, that is precisely what I'm intending to have conversations around and have started to have conversations around, is an integrative approach, at least from a data and information standpoint. Just that's kind of the bare minimum if you were to look at the pyramid. But I do believe that, looking at things from a more integrated system and network perhaps will provide some very interesting information that would empower our county to be a little bit more proactive when it comes to stormwater management. All right. Well, with that, I appreciate that question, and I appreciate all of the other questions that came in. Hopefully you saw it reflected in the frequently asked, because we really grouped them because many people ask very similar questions. So really appreciate everyone coming out. I appreciate all of the speakers who are here today. And because we're after time, I'm not going to say too much more, except please go home, be safe, and thank you again for coming.